All right, we're back on the Savage Nation. Now we have video and sound, right? Are you ready now? Because I'm ready now. Well, I have good news for myself. Is it just good news for me? Is it good news for the world? Is it good news for my ego? Is it good news for what? The title is Ratings Blowout on Savage's first solo TV show. And we'll go live. I hope it comes up as live because right now it's still showing the purple screen. And we did almost 300,000 on the first show. You have to understand something. I was going up against the biggest playoff game in history. In fact, I got this. Nobody could believe the ratings. I have to read this to you. Is it all about ratings? It is and it isn't. I launched a new show up against. It was Mission Impossible. I mean, I was dropped behind enemy lines with no supplies, and in the dark. This is what we did, and I want to thank you for this. I had a great guest, that's true, but listen to this for a minute. I got to read this to you. You did 278,000. Do you have any idea how big that is for a premiere show on a Sunday night up against the football game? A massive game. It's above average in any way. Nobody, they're saying to me in the industry, it's hard to guess what the number would have been without the football game, but it would have been at least double if it hadn't been for the big game. Nobody could believe this. Now, I want to thank my audience. I know how loyal you are. You elected me into the National Radio Hall of Fame when they were still voting on this, and I went up against Sean Hannity, who was a non-entity with a big audience, a complete zero with a big audience. And when the people actually could vote, they voted for me, not for the empty suit, Hannity, the warmonger maniac. So when you voted on Sunday night, you you have to understand this. This I just got this from a company. 57.7 million people watched the Bills Chiefs game in the AFC title game. That's almost 60 million people were watching that game. They say it's the second most watched non-Super Bowl game in NFL history. So I was thrown into the lion's den. I was thrown into a Mission Impossible, not because anyone wanted me to fail. It's just the way the timing was between the inauguration and the Bills Chief AFC title game. Who else would have done this but you? You did it on Newsmax TV. So, yeah, I had a great guest, Tucker Carlson, and it's a great conversation. I mean, it's incredible. You see him as a human being, maybe for the first time. And I even asked him, why did you come on this show? It's interesting to hear the response that he gave me because I said, Tucker, come on. I was once a king in radio. It was a long time ago. I have a couple 100,000 downloads a week on my podcast, which is great. But why would you come on to my first TV show? And he said, well, you'll have to listen for yourself. Here's the interesting part. We put the entire Tucker Carlson audio interview up on my podcast, and it's up now, wherever you get my podcast. Not the stuff that wound up on TV, but all of the interview from the beginning to the end. You can't get it anywhere but else on the Savage Nation podcast. Unedited version of the Michael Savage Tucker Carlson interview only here. New podcast with Tucker Carlson. Listen here, michaelsavage.com, unedited version. He's a very warm person, very different than you may imagine. Savage ratings blowout on Newsmax TV. Keep watching this coming Sunday. It's going to be even bigger. No football this Sunday. Could you imagine? And I have a very special guest on for this Sunday. You know who it is? I already posted it on X. It's my son, Russ, my hero. And we talk about the birth of the Savage Nation. He was with me with the Paul Revere Society. He was with me in the early days of radio. And I remember saying to him, Russ, you got to go out on your own again. He was always working since he's a kid. And he tells the amazing story of Rockstar, which he built on a card table to a $5 billion business. And I want you to understand what an inspiration that is to all Americans who are trying to build a business and get ahead in this country. And as I said on Twitter, no, my ancestors did not come over on the Mayflower. They came over on the Mayflounder. I didn't inherit any money, nothing. I inherited a good name and some good values from my father and mother, period, end of story. I am the American dream. I'm an immigrant son. I am the American dream. Why am I talking through a coffee cup? I feel like a kid with a new set of trains, and I'm waking up at 5 in the morning. I can't wait to go play with the trains, but I don't want to get out of the warm bed. And there's a lot of things going on in my life right now. You say at any age it would be exciting. It would be. Remember, I once had a television show. What is it, 25, 30 years ago on MSNBC? It lasted 3 months. I had 1 million people watching on that show. They threw me into another hell. Saturday afternoon, no promotion, hostile communist staff in the control room. And we did almost 1 million people then. But everything's changed in the media. When there's so many opportunities to look at things online and YouTube and whatnot, that everything's fragmented. So the thought was that if I hit 100,000 on this first show, it would be a miracle. Nobody even thought I did 100,000. So then the ratings come in late last night, and it was 278,000 watchers. That's against the biggest football playoff in history, with no outside promotion, only on Newsmax TV, no outside promotion. Not one of the wonderful people in the media would even cover the ratings blowout, which is news in the media. I mean, you got people in the media who cover the media. This is a media story. It just shows you how sick they are. They won't even cover this story. But I'm used to it. I've lived in San Francisco since 1974. You would think that a native son of the Golden West like myself, and the success that I've had and I'm still having at any age, would be a story, but no. They'd rather cover a transvestite selling condoms to infants on Market Street. I am the American dream. I am the American immigrant. I am Michael Savage. Someone said to me, what would your grandfather think if he could see your son and you now? Well, I don't know. He came here. He worked, lived in a room with other people. He worked his way out of, I don't know how he did it, but he opened up his own tailor shop. He wasn't just working in some schleppy tailor shop, pressing clothing. He must have been pretty remarkable because he made suits, I'm told, by hand. I don't know how you make a suit by hand. He sewed the suit by hand. He made suits for people from uptown in New York. Apparently, a lot of the mob guys bought suits in there. I don't know who could buy a suit in those days. He was known as a fine tailor. So Sam was the astronaut of the family. Imagine coming over here with not speaking the language. How frightening America must have been. Say, well, why don't you have compassion for the immigrants that are here now? Well, I do for those who come here to work. But the lifeboat is full, and we'll all drown if we don't kick out the 20 million that Biden flooded in, most of whom were not coming here to work. I saw condoms for Palestinians. And, they're mentally ill people to spend their genius. Palestinians are known as the smartest amongst the Arabic people. I've heard this for 50 years from people who know the truth. But wherever they go, instead of building, they destroy. They went to Jordan. They tried to take over Jordan. 30,000 Palestinians were killed by the Jordanians when they tried to overthrow the king of Jordan. It's known as Black September. The Black September movement of the PLO originated when they tried to overtake and take over the whole country of Jordan. They were let in as strangers into Jordan, and then they tried to take over the country. And 30,000 Palestinians were killed by the Jordanians, if you want to know a little bit of history. That's Arab killing Arab. The Saudis don't want them. The Egyptians don't want them. When they were taken into Lebanon, after a war with Israel. They almost destroyed Lebanon. It used to be the Paris of the Middle East, Beirut. After the PLO got through with Lebanon, it turned into rubble, like Gaza right now. What is this about them? Why did they do this? They're such smart people. So they take a condom and they put explosives in it and then float them over to burn down Israel. This is really smart. I mean, I did a podcast on the story of the Japanese doing this in World War II. Maybe they watched my podcast. Shalom Aleichem, Aleichem Shalom. I mean, if I were Palestinian, I'd watch me. They think like me, except I'm creative and they're destructive by and large. No, I didn't come over on the Mayflower. I'm not a one of those. I mean, I wish I was. I know why. I wish I wasn't what? I wish there was nothing. I am what I am. They came over on the Mayflounder. I thought that was a funny line yesterday because people think, oh, all white people come here with an advantage. Yeah, really. Tell me about it. My grandfather died at age 49 after getting a start in America from working, not from living in the Roosevelt Hotel, playing dominoes and snorting crack at night or blowing dope in the afternoon. Don't tell me that we all help each other. Nobody helped him. It's God, my friend, and I talk to God every morning now. I've always had this thing, the superego talking to God, but we ignore God if we can. We watch TV, we watch football, whatever we do. We don't want to hear that voice. You say, oh, the still small voice. You better start listening to it. It's all you got. That's you. But I don't want to do a God talk right now. I'm kind of wanting to talk about the show that's coming up this Sunday night to be my number 2 show. I'm going to see what happens on the second night, not going up against a football game. So if you missed my first show, are you going to watch it the second time? The second show? Because I'm interviewing my son, Russ, where we talk about the Paul Revere Society, the birth of the Savage Nation, but mainly his story, how he built his genius business with his own investment by mortgaging his condominium. This guy worked since the time he was a child. And he tells me that the way he was made into this businessman that he is, well, let him tell it. I don't want to preempt what he says. He tells the story of the lion's cage. He tells the story of a lot of different things. How I made him hard and tough and business wise as a child. You got to train a child to understand the world. They don't just learn it by and large. Some do, but most don't. Donald Trump came from a father who was a hardworking builder. But it didn't mean that he was going to be successful. He had a brother who wasn't successful. He fell by the wayside. Sad story. He talks about him. So just because you inherit a business or you inherit money doesn't mean you're going to make something of yourself. As the English used to say, families go from sandals to sandals in 3 generations, which is a very interesting statement. You look around San Francisco and you see people like those who live on Pacific Heights. I mean, take the Gettys, for example. None of their children have amounted to very much. I'm not sitting here celebrating that. It's sad. From sandals to sandals in 3 generations. I remember my father, we fought all the time when I was a teenager. Don't think it was pleasant. He was as tough as nails, and he didn't treat me very well. But I realized what he was doing. I mean, I've realized it for many years. But I found that there was a way to raise a child without being mean. You could make them strong without being mean. Believe me, that's the trick is to make your children strong without being a mean bastard. You don't have to demean them to make them strong. You don't have to run them down to make them strong. You don't have to put them down to make them strong. My father used that method. As I said to you, mean, almost no kindness after a certain age. When I was a child, yes, he was kind to me. But once I became a young teenager, it was, throw him out into the wilderness. Because he used to say things to me that come back to me. It's worth talking about now. This is not in any of the shows. I once was arguing with him. I remember almost to this day where it was. It was on 2nd Avenue and around 17th Street. We were riding in his car. I always remember those cars, the DeSoto, a big DeSoto green with a roof rack for carrying merchandise, delivering. And I was about to go to college. I was leaving Queens College. I was 16 years old. I got out of college pretty young. And I wanted to go, like all of the other kids who came from slightly better off families in Queens, to a private college. I so wanted to get out of New York and go to a out of town college. I mean, the names are magical. You know, I can repeat them like we all had pennants on the wall of the schools we wanted to go to. And he said to me, I don't have the money to send you to a private college, but even if I did, I wouldn't. It'll ruin you. It'll spoil you. He says, go to Queens College and do the best you can. You got to make it on your own, period. I got so angry at him. I was enraged saying that to me, but he was right. What difference would it have been made if I went to Vanderbilt or Tulane? Beautiful schools. You know, I had crappy grades in high school. I was a dreamer. My mind wandered. I didn't really focus that well. I'm thinking back on the whole thing now, you know, a lot of it. So I'll tell you another story, a funny story that's in none of my podcasts. I'm being very intimate with you right now because it's a very strange time in my life. It's like I'm starting all over again. All over again. It's like a whole new, I haven't been on TV since I started in radio in 94. I had that TV show on MSNBC. I don't even know when. When was it? 96, 98. It lasted 3 months. And then they threw me off for one word that they could have edited out. It was a setup, the whole thing from the get-go. They had the ability to cut that piece out. I mean, I knew I had a talent for the media from the time I was a child, but I didn't want to just be in the media. I wanted to do something more meaningful. And so I went into plant collecting, herbal medicine, nutrition. That's where my books really matter, and the God book. The political books are actually ingenious. Some of them are as good as what some of the great people have written. I look back on my first New York Times bestseller, The Savage Nation. I was shocked. Saving America from the Liberal Assault on Our Borders, Language, and Culture. I think I read this to you the other day. From the Bronx to Broadcasting, Diversity is Perversity. America from the Melting Pot to the Chamber Pot. Chapter 4, Rats versus Eagles. We're the rats. They're the... who are the rats in America? Us or them? Well, we're the eagles. They're the rats. They're the rats who work in the middle of the night. All the Marvins of the ACLU undermining the pillars of our civilization. They're the rats who teach our children to do perverse things. They're the rats who flood America with drug dealers and criminals and then cry and make believe that Trump is mean for kicking them out in the middle of the night. Chapter 5, Christophobia in Praise of Christianity. I'm Jewish, and I did a chapter on that. 6, Trickle-down immorality. Chapter 7, Immigrants and Epidemics, TB Anyone. And 9, Crimes of the Democrats. Now, it's interesting that when I wrote Immigrants and Epidemics, this book was published in 2002. That topic began a lot earlier than that. Oh, here's that story. Oh, my God, I'm in the mood. I'm just all over the place. I'm having fun this morning. I woke up. I'm fighting a head cold. Don't give me advice. I wrote the advice. I wrote the Cathcart. I mean, I everyone who gets sick, I tell them, take bowel tolerance levels of ascorbic acid. But I found what goes with it and actually makes the vitamin C work much more efficiently. That's vitamin A. I have to trigger the vitamin C with 100,000 units of high quality vitamin A. And that's close to the tolerance level of vitamin A because it's fat soluble. You got to be very careful with vitamin A. Do not megadose on vitamin A unless you know what the hell you're doing. So I take, when I feel a cold coming on, I really haven't taken the A now that I think about it. I dose up on C, bowel tolerance levels, but I take 100,000 units of A the first time, and then I reduce it to 50,000, then 20,000, then back to 10,000, and then maintenance doses. It works every time. Then I take some zinc along with it. And I should be drinking green tea to couple the virus, but I don't. I'm drinking coffee with, I put stuff in it. I put cacao powder, no sugar, and cinnamon. I love cinnamon. So You know, the stress of this is very interesting of a new show. I would say pulling off and doing my first show is the greatest stress I've had in my adult life. That first month was very difficult. It was not easy. It was easier the second show, which is coming up Sunday. Even that show is still in the making right now, but I got it under control. We have much better control. We had problems with the Zoom system on the first interview, which is why it's not as high quality as I would like it. The second one is going to be better. The third one even better. So I'm not functioning out of a television studio. Okay, it's my own home studios. I won't work otherwise. You could offer me $1 million a show, I wouldn't do it in a television studio. It's just not for me. This is where I like to work, is in the comfort of my own home. A man was once in his 40s, and he tried so hard to succeed. He did everything right, and he wasn't succeeding. No matter what he did, it didn't work. He was failing, and he had children. He went to a rabbi uh, from the old school, an old school rabbi, and he says to the old rabbi, "Rabbi, I'm working so hard. Why is God not giving me my rewards?" The rabbi said to him, "What does a man need? A man needs a desk, a chair, and a lamp." There was a motto to that story. What did the rabbi mean a man needs a desk, a chair, and a lamp? He means to study the Bible, to study the Torah, to reach God. You don't need a lot. Do I have to tell you how many people live in multi-mansions and are miserable inside? They're broken inside. There's nothing there. They've given up their soul for their wealth. It doesn't mean that people who are wealthy have no soul. It doesn't mean that the poor are noble. Trust me, I punctured the whole myth of the noble savage a long time ago. I no pun intended. The noble savage punctured a long time ago. No, not poverty is not ennobling. I learned that from, who was it I read that from? Bertrand Russell, I think. I think that Bertrand Russell, who was one of my heroes. He wrote Principia Mathematica. He was like, I used to look up at his work as God. I mean, when I was in my teen years and modeling my mind on people, it was Bertrand Russell, Aldous Huxley, Ernest Hemingway, and a few others. Then I got distracted. I think it was. No, it wasn't. It was Somerset Maugham, the great English novelist, who wrote that poverty does not ennoble. And he said that he was a doctor originally, and he said that he worked in the wards of the poor in England. And he said, trust me, he said, poverty does not ennoble. It makes man meaner and more vicious, is what he said. He said, it takes money to be noble. He said, only people with money have the ability to be graceful and kind to others. I thought that was very interesting. It was Somerset Maugham, came back to me. But before I get into something else, I promised something earlier. I was remembering back to my dad in the car and us arguing when I wanted to go to a private school. And he said, even if I had the money, I wouldn't give it to you. I remember we were driving on the Grand Central Parkway in Queens, and there was Jamaica High School up on the hill. Beautiful school, great architecture. And I was like graduating. I was going to graduate from junior high at that time, go into high school. I was never a great student. I told you I was a dreamer. My mind was always somewhere else. Or I was looking at the girl's ponytail in the row in front of me, hey, schoolgirl in the second row and all that. My mind was always somewhere else. Or I was goofing around with my friends in the classroom or between things. I mean, I like to have a good time. So I remember looking at that high school up on the hill, and I remember saying to myself, I was just like, oh, God, I wish you would give me a magic pencil. I remember that. A magic pencil so I could write all the right answers in high school so I could go on to a great college. That's a kid. Kid dreams like that. A child dreams of a magic pencil. A man doesn't dream of a magic pencil. So that was that era of my life, and working in the basement, that horrible, disgusting, dark, dingy, cyanide-infested, rag-infested basement. Yeah, that shaped me a little bit too. It's a little too autobiographical right now. It's okay. It's where I'm at. I'm sort of sharing this with those of you. I don't want to talk about the RFK Jr. hearing. I mean, you can do that. You know what I'm saying? What year, Savage, so we can get a visual? I was born in 42. I graduated high school at 16. That would make it 58, right? Yeah, I entered college in 59, something like that. The Bonneville, the TriStar Bonneville with the fins. My friend had one with triple carbs. What a car. Wow. I graduated the year of the Cadillac with the big fins, I think. Everything was a car. So, yeah, so here we are. There's no magic pencil. You just got to study hard. I'm going to close today's hello to you with a little bit something or other. I got up today at 5 a.m. because we're having a planning meeting to finish the second TV show later today. I have it basically in the can, so to speak, with a great interview of my son, Russ, who is my hero, where we talk about not about him and not about me, but about the birth of the Savage Nation. You got to understand why I'm interviewing my son. He created the Paul Revere Society with me. He was on stage with me at the Marin Civic Center and the Concord Pavilion. He was there. So was Mrs. Savage. And then he tells the amazing story of how he got into the energy drink business. And you don't understand how hard that was. You think that it was just made. If you had any idea what he overcame to build that business, maybe you'll understand it when you hear him. How he had to mortgage his own little condominium, which he bought with his own savings for the time he was working when he got out of college, to invest in his own company. And he talks about all of that. I mean, it's a pretty big story about America. He should be doing a video. He's been approached to do a story of the rock star story, his life. He sold it 3 years ago for a tidy sum, and now he's doing other things. What is this now that I wanted to read? Now I don't even want to read it anymore. Yeah, this is fun. It's like I'll tune it down, which is in this old book of mine. And this was during the year of the Gore hanging Chad election. Do you remember that one? The Florida vote with the hanging Chads? Although I am a bipartisan basher and have been highly critical of the Republicans' liberal leanings, I wrote, this was in '02. I have to go with the Republicans over the Democrats for the reason I expressed in this chapter. Take the last national election. I remember being in West Palm Beach, Florida. I write, let me shut down the lower screen. My color will be better. Hold it a minute. Watch how lighting changes. Watch this. Turn off the lower monitor, and boom, see the color gets better. Take the last national election, I wrote. I remember being in West Palm Beach, Florida on November 10th, 2000, to be with my mom. Oh, God bless her. Not there anymore. Something just still call her up. I used to call her up years after she passed. I would like reach for the phone, and there's no mom. You know, that's life. Does that happen to you when your parents go? Like they're gone? In memorializing this Florida vote battle, I wrote the following for my radio show. I call it Can of Worms. Remember this one? 38 states said yes to Bush. 12 states said yes to Gore. Are some states more equal than other states? South Florida, where millionaires grifting off the welfare state pretend to each other the moral indignation of the downtrodden. Lexus liberals with Volkswagens on the brain. Condo commies, lunchroom Lenins, stand-up Stalins, miserable Maos, stealing ballots, grifting SSI, faking disabilities, voting for Al Gore, all in a day's work, South Florida. The land of sunshine, schmoozing, and now stupidity. The whole world now knows New York Democrats are too stupid to vote straight, but smart enough to twist the truth when their benefits are threatened. South Florida, the land of suntanned Trotskys and delis, bypassed Bolsheviks and Buicks, air-conditioned Cheys in condos, loud, lewd losers in limbo, stuck between their investments and their liberalism, lost to God, fervent in their non-belief, except in the DNC, their new religion. South Florida, corned beef commies, buffet bolshies, jogging jokesters, stuck in Camelot fantasies. Kennedy, their last idol, a drunk profligate warmonger covered for by his classy wife. Hillary, their Evita Peron. Bill, their shameless Shagets. Tipper, their tipsy donut. Al, their Shabbos Goy. South Florida, the land of sun and SOBs. Crooked chiropractors. Degenerate dentists. Medicare medicos. Harlot heart surgeons. Nutty neurologists. Craven cardiologists, improbable proctologists, petty pornographers, huge urologists, incensed internists, demon cats all, strip clubs in strip malls, lantana hedges hiding black glassed assets, South Florida, the land of sun and stolen votes. It's pretty good. It's good. It's good. And my friends, that concludes today's missive from yours truly, me, Michael Savage. Again, if you missed the beginning, we're talking about the ratings blowout of my first Newsmax TV show last Sunday, where we're against the biggest playoff game in history. You ready? Did you hear what happened? I mean, I had 278,000. They were aiming, they said, if you hit 100, it'll be a big deal. So I went up against 57.7 million people watched the Bills-Chiefs in the AFC title game, the second most watched non-Super Bowl game in NFL history. That's pretty amazing. And we still blew out the ratings because of you, because you followed me all these years. 278,000 watched it, 13% above the Times lot average on the night of a massive game. And people in the industry are saying it's hard to guess what the number would have been without the Chiefs game. They said it would have been at least double if it hadn't been for the big game. So thank you for listening. And the second one is going to be better than the first, interviewing Russ. And there's nothing else to be said. I mean, that's where we're at. We have another 5 minutes of the Tucker interview that we couldn't fit in the first show. That'll be in the second, with most of the show about the beginning of the Paul Revere Society. In case you know what the Paul Revere Society is, I built it with my son, Russ. And here was the original card of it. Some of you still have these collector's items. The Paul Revere Society mission statement. If you want to know where Levin and Hannity and all of the other copycats get their ideas from, look no further than Michael Savage. They all listened to my show and stole it. This nation was built upon the Bible, the U.S. Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. These documents are what they stand for. These documents and what they stand for are our common cultural heritage. We deplore aliens stealing our social security, debasing our English language, foreign powers infiltrating our government, poisoning our children's minds in our schools, seeking to destroy our military might, contaminating our houses of worship. This is pretty good. We seek to reassert every citizen's birthright, equal opportunity for all, end affirmative action, stop immigration for 5 years, ban mandatory AIDS vaccine. We didn't know about the COVID vaccine, and that was coming, but this was written in the beginning of the Paul Revere Society on the membership card. That was the back of the card. Our borders, our language, and our culture. So we preceded and predated the Tea Party movement. We predated the MAGA movement. It was Russ and I built it. And I'm very proud to say that here we are today. And I want to focus on one last part of this. I said we deplore debasing our English language. I was reading a book last night about the history of Germany. I'm interested in history of various nations. I happen to have a book I bought years ago on the history of Germany. And I was reading that after Germany had been destroyed in some ancient wars and the country was fractured, I think it was post-Middle Ages, they still had their language. And it was upon their language that their culture was based. The German language is based up. The whole culture is based on the German language. Language is the essence of a nation. Look how this country has been debased. No, this is not English as a second language. This is English only. And, if I could have Trump do an executive order, only one, you know what it'd be? All ballots must be in English only. He didn't do that one. I don't want him in Spanish and Hindi and Farsi and Schmarsi and Arabic and Hebrew. I don't want him in 16 languages. You know who started that? Nancy Pelosi in San Francisco, when the ballots in California were made into 16 languages so all the illegal aliens could vote in plain English. Come on. Can't read the tea leaves here. So there it is. One more executive order, Mr. Trump, President Trump. All official documents in America will be in English only. And you can only vote if you can read and write English, because the ballots are only going to be in English. Okay? That would help save America right then and there. I don't know. There's a lot going on. There's so much to talk about. So, like Paul Revere riding his white horse, dedicated to preserving our borders, language, and culture. No, I'm not ready to ride off into the sunset. I'm ready to say sayonara for right now. And please go to my podcast if you want to catch the entire unexpurgated, unedited interview with Tucker Carlson. It's all on my existing podcast. And what's coming up this Sunday is in many ways even more amazing. I can't make one show better than the other. That's impossible. But they'll be good. They'll be probably going to be more like my old radio show is what I think is going to happen. By what I feel is once I build the audience to watch me on Sunday nights, God willing, on Newsmax TV, it'll be freeform like this. There'll be a lot more like these shows right on television is what's going to happen. I mean, I'll talk to you and you'll see it on television. That's really where it's going to go. That's how it's going to be. No matter what size shirt I buy, I get choke in a tie. Either my neck got bigger or I don't know what happened. I mean, I bought an extra size shirt and I was still choking when I put on a tie. I like ties. My mother taught me how to make a Windsor knot when I was a kid. Windsor knots are hard to make, the correct Windsor. I see Schmendricks on television. They can't quite get that dimple right in a tie. Or you see guys put a tie on at the last minute, it's sideways. Oh, the tie is a tough thing to pull off. I like to wear turtlenecks, but it's not the 1950s in a beatnik club. I'd rather just wear a turtleneck, and like a leather jacket, like a suede jacket. I like to talk with you. I really love talking with you on YouTube and on X. This is actually what I like more than anything. And frankly enough, Newsmax said, just do that. We'll be happy with it. They didn't insist I put on ties and shirts and make a regular show. They didn't. They said, do what you do on YouTube. That's what we really want. So I think in time, that's where I'm going to go. I have to be comfortable with what I'm doing. So today, thank you for listening on X, YouTube, and Facebook. And that's it. I mean, I wish I could stay with you longer, but I can't. I have a meeting coming up in 3 hours. I do. It's the funniest thing on earth is that the more you do, the more you can do. Did you know that? I'm going to tell this to all the depressed people out there. Like you feel you can't even get out of bed in the morning. You can't work. You're finished. You don't want to go on. You don't have the strength. Like, honey, I can't even put my feet out of the bed. Let me stay in bed. Bring me a coffee. I'll be back to you at noon. Get me your lunch. The more you do, the more you can do. I learned that 40 years ago. Get your butt out of bed. Go do something useful. And if you don't know how to do that, go and pray to God first thing in the morning. Why don't you try that? There's no way to describe what prayer can do for a man. No way to describe it unless you actually do it and feel a connection to the heavens. If you tune in, you don't have to turn on and tune out. That's a good one. If you tune in, you don't have to turn on and tune out. Timothy Leary had one part of it right when he said, turn on, tune in, tune out. He missed he got it almost right. He was tuning into the wrong entity. If you tune in, you don't have to turn on and you don't have to tune out. God will speak to you. He spoke to me this morning. I woke up, the head cold. Um, it was coming on. I was doing a little bit of vitamin C. I wasn't really paying that much attention to the vitamin A trigger I told you about, and the zinc and the green tea. You can't do it all. So, oh, what if I get sick now at the beginning of the show? What am I going to do? So you're not going to get sick. Just knock it off. You're just looking for a way out. So I said, you made a commitment to yourself to start tuning into God every morning, which is doing the tefillin, which is a thing that very, very religious, the black hats do. It's a very weird ritual. Maybe I should do it. I know it might be embarrassing to people to see it. I did it once on YouTube. It's probably still up there. The Orthodox Jewish people wrap these weird black boxes on their arm like this, a certain way, and then they put a weird box on their head, which has the word of God in it. And the whole object of that is to tie your heart and your mind into God. So you say, okay, you do that. I'm going to do that one time. Maybe I'll do it this Sunday. I'll tell you what, I'm going to make a commitment now. I'm not making a commitment now. I can't say what Sunday's going to bring. So you say, okay, you do that ritual. And I say, well, where's the magic in this? I guess I'm a cynical Western man, trained in scientific method, and logic and scientific method. So it's very hard to believe in, some people say, voodoo or magic or religion. They think it's all the same thing. They think that religion is like voodoo and magic. It is if you don't understand it and you don't tune in to God. Sure, it's like voodoo and magic. If your rational mind is all you have, then you're not really you're not seeing things clearly, because all you're seeing things is through the rational mind. And as you well know, there's much more to our dimensions than only solely the rational mind. You got to try to see how powerful you really are as a tuning fork. But with all the distractions out there, it's very hard to tune in, which is why people, used to go to churches and synagogues in droves, was to tune into God through the leader. Unfortunately, the leaders in most of these houses of religion don't lead us anywhere. It's like it's mumbo jumbo to most people. As I said to Tucker during our broadcast, it's amazing stuff that we talk about, is that unless you feel the floorboard shaking in your house of worship, you're not feeling God. And I remember when I first felt it was in New York, in a black Abyssinian church in Harlem. I was so searching, and met a street preacher named Brother Billy. I had this little old Volkswagen, and Brother Billy was just banging me on the head with, Christ and Christians. It was beautiful. I mean, his belief was strong. I'm never shaken in my faith, so I didn't get threatened by it. So he said, let me show you what it's about. Would you come uptown with me? I said, how? He said, you have a car? I said, happen to. Anyway, we got in the car. It was in Midtown Manhattan. Who knows how? And we drove uptown to Harlem when you could still, I don't know how I found the spot. And we go in. It was a storefront church. I heard chanting. And you open the door. It's like, what? And it was African Americans, man. And they were with God. That was the first time I saw it. The second time I saw people reaching God was in the Fiji Islands in the 60s, when I would sit up all night drinking kava kava with the men on straw mats, and we would drink the kava and we would chant, and they go, Amdo. I can still hear it to this day, Amdo. I remember it. And they didn't drink to get inebriated. The kava kava was part of a ritual. It was not meant for inebriation. The third time I felt the floorboard shake was 1975, 74, 76, I don't know, around then, Berkeley, California, when I was trying to come back to God. and didn't know how to go back. So I started to speak to different, rabbis and whatnot, and I wasn't getting the connection. And one of them, a very nice guy, modern Orthodox rabbi, said to me, Michael, he says, you know where you belong? He says, you ought to go over to Berkeley and meet a certain rabbi. He says, they're a Chabad movement. I never heard of it. I said, why? He says, you'll see. You'll see. So I guess it was 75, 76. Who the hell knows? 4, 5, 6. And my son Russ was with me. We go over to Berkeley one night. Again, I open a door and I see these crazy people in black clothing chanting in a circle with their hands on each other's shoulders and chanting to God and singing. I never saw anything like it since the Fiji Islands and since the church with the black folks. And this Rabbi Langa comes over. I became his great friend, and he sees me, tall guy with red hair. My son, God bless him, has red hair, and he reaches over, never met me before, smiles, picks my son up and puts him on his shoulders and starts dancing with him in a circle. So, this is weird shit, man. And I got drawn into that circle. Floorboards were shaking again. And that's what I'm trying to say to you. Now, I've been in and out of the floorboards my whole life. In fact, that would be a good autobiography title, In and Out of the Floorboards. It's a pretty good title. Steal it, take it if you want. It's almost as good as the Constitution. No, in On and Off the Floorboards would be a good title. In fact, I should write it then. Wait a minute, I got to write that one down. On and Off the Floorboards. I'm never going to write it, but On and Off the Floorboards. I get these ideas sometimes, and they're good. On, and always write your ideas down. On and Off the Floorboards. It has a lot in it because it's not only about religion. I would talk about my cars. I could much as tell you about my old Chrysler with the big V8 engine and the time that I smashed it in Queens. And I had to sell it because it was just wrecked, destroyed. Someone sideswiped me. And I remember putting it up for sale. I don't even know how we sold cars in those days, but it had a big V8 Hemi engine in it. Remember, it was a regular Chrysler New Yorker, but they had Hemi heads on them. I didn't even know what the hell it had in it. So this guy comes out, this Hell's Angel shows up with his motorcycle to buy it. He was the nicest guy in the world. And I sold him the thing. Whatever I asked him, he bought it for. I didn't even know why I wanted the engine. He was buying the car for the engine. On and off the floorboards. I've always been crazy about cars. So, okay, my friends, I think I've rambled on enough this morning. I could stay with you forever, but I want to tell you this. I have one more thing to say before I go, which is the whole message of today's show is not about me, not about the ratings blowout. The only reason I'm alive is to tell you about him. I figured it out. That's when he saved me in the hospital. And that's when I went back a second time and I thought it was over. And the black African nurse, remember I told you about her? When she came in the room and she said, your time is not over, you have work to do. And she came in, I knew what village she was from in Africa, and I've never been to Africa. I told you that story. Listen, there are supernatural forces in us. Never mind out there. I'm talking about in us. And it's frightening when you tune into it. If you don't know how to deal with it, you can make a lot of mistakes. You can use these powers in the wrong way, the right way. You can use it to make a fortune, lose a fortune, make a family, lose a family, create a world, lose a world. If you have the power that God really gave you, and each of us is divine in that regard. That's true. They're not lying to you. No matter how you think you're a broken down nothing or how great you are, really at a certain point, each of us has that atomic energy in us, that little chip of atomic energy. And that chip of atomic energy comes from the masterful universe of atomic energy created by the one true God. Shalom. Thanks for listening. And I'm Michael Savage, and I thank God for every breath I have. I hope you do too. Remember, without God, there's nothing.